This is A Lost Plot, the podcast where we explore meaning in movies together. Hey everyone, welcome to this recording of John Wick. I'm here with Andrew. We're really excited to hear what you guys have to think about what we say in this podcast. Just a little heads up, we do talk a lot about the gory nature of this movie and draw a couple more explicit comparisons and parallels.
Now we do.
So just be aware. Maybe not the best conversation to have playing in front of younger children, if that's something you're concerned about. If we're making any jokes, we're in all seriousness not condoning any of the extreme topics that we talk about here. We're simply
Speak
making
for yourself. Yeah. We don't condone anything. Our jokes are all in good fun. We're not Matt Rife.
We legitimately are trying to delve down deep into what makes a good story, and I think these comparisons are helpful, which is why we decided to leave them in for you. Just be aware of this going forward. Enjoy the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's your boy with another episode of A Lost Plot. Today, I am reviewing a absolute classic in some people's minds with our great guest back with us again, Andrew. Thank you for coming out today. Oh my gosh. You just are so ready to piss me off, dude.
You're
so ready to annoy me. So, today we are reviewing John Wick. Not the fourth one that came out within the past year. We're doing the first one, because the first one is the only one I'm probably going to review. It was a neo-noir action thriller released in 2014. It was written by Derek Kolstad and directed by Chad Stahelski. It stars Keanu Reeves as John Wick, Michael Nyqvist as Viggo Tarasov, Alfie Allen as Yosef Tarasov, who's Viggo's son, and Willem Dafoe as the friend of John Wick, Marcus. Before we get into the rating, Andrew, why don't you tell us what John Wick is about?
It is about an ex-hitman who retired, got married, wife dies at the beginning, she sends him a dog, then some punk kid kills his dog, steals his car, he gets mad and kills a lot of people.
Pretty much sums it up. So, Andrew, on a scale of the 9-point rating system that we use so often in this podcast, on a scale of 0 to 9, what do you give this movie?
Without even looking at it,
you're such a piece, dude. Oh my gosh.
Probably like 5.5.
I hate you, dude. Okay, so whatever. I gave this movie a 3.15, which is honestly higher than I thought I would.
I need to look at this rating system you have. Did you email it to me?
I texted it to you, and we used it before, but...
Oh, fine. I'll just open it up.
It's okay. We'll go over it, honestly, today. So, it's the best way to get into understanding the values and the themes and the story as far as I've come across for breaking down a story pretty quickly and understanding what makes it great or not. And always we're trying to improve it. So, if anyone has any feedback, reach out to us, lostplot.com. All right, back into it. So, the opener. The scene opens up with this character, John Wick, whose wife has died. His dog is the last present from his wife. And then the whole thing you just talked about with Viggo's son coming around, killing the dog, and stealing his car. In regards to an opening scene, what did you think? Did you think that it was an opener that caught your attention, that was compelling? What did you think, Andrew?
The opener was just basically his wife dying, right?
Yeah, well, it includes all of those things that really get the story going. So, his wife dying,
I think my question
dog,
for you is,
sure.
When do you think the opening ends?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a fair question. Depending on the movie, it depends on how much is seamless. There's the whole opening act is the point where the main character goes from being a more or less introduced to the scene where they get involved in the conflict. So that is the whole main act. Now, that first scene is introducing us to the character, their hurts, their pains, and what's going on from there. Sometimes, and it's hard to say exactly if that's always the case because they don't always do that in the opening scene, but the opening scene introduces us to generally the characters. And in this movie, it is.
I think the opening scene was okay. It was interesting. You didn't really know what was going on, and I think sometimes in movies it's like hit or miss with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes if you do something totally random, people are like, "Why do I care?" Or they're like, "Oh shoot, this looks interesting."
Do you have any examples that come to mind when you think of one that has done that that's more of a miss? Just just out of curiosity. And obviously those are harder to remember because they by definition are less memorable, but
Like 90% of the movies I start watching on Netflix,
you turn them right back off. Yeah, that's
I'm
probably
like,
true.
I'm kind of bored right now. I don't have anything to do. What is this movie? It looks interesting. Start playing it. No, never mind. I have better things to do.
Then
Nothing is
watch.
better than this.
Yeah. I think there's a lot that can fall into having a bad opener. And the opener is really what gets everyone involved. The longer that people are watching something, the more they've invested into it, the more likely they are to finish it. So the
Yeah.
opener being that like gripping beginning is pretty critical. Um For me, I actually thought the opener was one of the best parts of the movie. So they have a character who's clearly uh emotionally in a rough spot, right? And they show that from the start. They don't exactly explain everything, but you get the picture. His wife's dead. There's this dog, um, all this kind of stuff. And I think that that's where um it really kicks it off on the right foot. I think you can make the argument of whether or not the enemies coming into the room and trying to kill him is actually a compelling, or like in the opening scene, whether you do or don't is whatever. That part I still thought was compelling as an opener. That being said, personally, I did not enjoy it. And this is the maybe the most grace I want to give this movie is the opener, because the opener has the scene with obviously his dog dying, the gift of his wife. I think that the a lot of people who are fans of John Wick, and I'm sure as you listen to this, you understand as an audience that I am not a fan of John Wick, but the John Wick movie series is started off in this first movie with the dog dying as being the thing, and for me, I felt like that was almost uh, a cheapened emotional grab compared to everything they had shown before with the wife and everything else. The fact that the dog dies is the thing that sets him off. I don't think is a very compelling point. You can make the point that it is, but regardless, I don't think it's worth quibbling over. I still gave it full points for that beginning scene. Anyways, main character. What did you think of John Wick's character? Is he a compellingly flawed individual?
What do you mean compellingly flawed?
When we're looking at stories, right? At the end of the day, a story is about an individual that is presented to us, right? And so an individual who is in the story is what we're interested in. Whether it's a epic battle of galactic proportions, you're still talking about, let's just say, Luke Skywalker or Anakin Skywalker and who they are in the movie, right? Rather than just, oh, there's this giant battle in space. It's about specific individuals. One of the things that you want to see is a character that has some opportunity for growth. So when they have flaws, they have an opportunity to grow from where they are lacking to become a better person, and that provides an opportunity for a character arc. So that's what we're looking at when we're saying is the character compellingly flawed.
I'm gonna be honest. I think there is an element. Yes, I think yes. You're welcome, Maverick.
Okay, you want to dive into that a little bit?
I mean, the whole premise they're going for is a guy who is not a normal person. He is
Of course.
not. your average Joe Schmo off the street. And a large part of that is he's never lived a normal life. He's always been someone who could not get attached. He killed who knows how many people. And there's like a line in the movie, like he's the guy you call to kill the boogeyman. So like he's the ultimate like hitman.
Baba Yaga, right?
Yeah. And so like the drive for him before this movie, and you can even see it later on throughout the movie play out, is he thirsts for that normal life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what his wife was to him. And then his wife dies. And he's like, well, crap. And then she leaves him that dog. And it's like, okay, I still have some semblance of a normal life then, because his wife was that thing that was tying him down. By himself, just because he's living and not killing people doesn't mean he has a normal life per se.
Of course not.
And so that dog was also a tie to that life, but also to his wife. And so when that kid came in there and like killed the dog, stole his car, he is a man who has nothing left to lose. Right. He has no will to live. There is nothing fulfilling about his life. And so as a person, the only thing he can chase now, because he can't chase that life anymore, that life has been stolen from him, the only thing he can chase is revenge. And so that's why I think it is still compelling as a character, because he's still chasing something, but it's the only thing left he has to chase. And if he dies, so what? He has nothing left to lose.
Right. Well, that's exactly, I think, part of the problem. But I think you are making a fairly decent point, and I actually don't disagree that as a character that he's got strong flaws, right? He obviously is a man of revengefulness. He's got a grudge, and he's willing to hold that against anyone. So he goes to the nth degree to take it out. So it's not that this movie didn't start out right, because as much as I hate the fact that the dog is the thing that instigates this whole thing, you could kind of push that to the side and say, okay, well, even if it was his wife or some other more meaningful thing in his life that was taken away at the end to cause him to be involved in this scenario, I still think that they started off the movie pretty well, and this is another point where he did have a good grudge that he was going with. I'd give it full points for this because I think that he definitely didn't have. It wasn't really clear what the flaw of revenge was really tied to, other than because he clearly had it from the boogeyman past that he had, and why that was tied there wasn't clear. But overall, it was still strong.
I'm gonna be honest. You expressed this frustration with the dog being like the thing that caused all this. I think the dog being the thing that causes it's decent. I mean, sure, you could say there's always a way to get better, but the thing is like he was already on the edge with all of this. Okay,
sure.
Like his character is someone who the only thing he knows, other than the 5 years he spent with his wife, was killing. That was his life. That's all it was killing people. It's what he knows how to do best, and he's great at it. And so, in a sense, you could almost expect someone like him, if he's just left alone long enough, to just kind of crack, just go crazy. Because you have nothing.
You're saying this from personal experience?
But like when that's all you're around, when that's all you do, it has a toll on your psychological, like your psyche. And so to an extent, it's like, yeah, he already was a ticking time bomb. He had nothing holding him down anymore. And these kids came and pissed him off. And so he's like, oh, okay, I'm going to go kill you now. And so that's what he does. I mean, if you think about it, in the grand scheme of things, the first movie doesn't really do very much. He interacts with one crime boss.
Yeah, I mean that's for going on for later in the story for sure. But yes,
I just want to say I think the dog was it was okay. I'm not going to get up here and say it was the best thing, but
I'll get more to my beef with the dog later, but um, and you'll see why. Anyway, side characters. Did
Yeah.
you think that the side characters had their own motives for being involved in this plot, other than outside of the main characters?
Who would you say the side characters were? Because I have a few I'm thinking
For
of.
example, the people in the what's the organization's name? The Continental. So there's the characters in the Continental. Those are probably the biggest examples. I mean, yeah, honestly, because there's the Continental, there's John Wick, and then there's the
There's his
enemies,
one
the
friend.
Russian mob boss. Yeah, Marcus, who I would say is also a side character, but he's also connected with the Continental, so I didn't think it was outside the scope there.
I think the side characters, for the most part, it was interesting because you didn't know a lot about them, but I think they did a decent
Mm-hmm.
job of showing you without telling you who they were and why they were there. And so, like the guy, the clerk at the Continental, the black guy,
Mm-hmm.
like you get the idea that he knows all the crap that goes down there, but he's
Mm-hmm.
just there to make money. Like it's just a job to him,
Right.
and he just works for his boss. The owner of the Continental, you find out in later movies what he's like, all the organizational structure. But from that movie, you get that he's just a business owner. He owns a business,
Right. Right.
and it's against the rules to do any sort of killing or fighting within his business. Like
Right.
that's part of his model. Like you can come here and it's a safe haven,
Right.
and if you break that rule, you die. And you saw that with that one chick.
Right, right, exactly, and that's part of the setting as well. I will say that the side characters are pretty. You are right that they show some motivation for them. So I thought
Mm-hmm.
that their motivation was pretty basic and stock because everyone was just there for money, and it didn't show why they needed the money or whatever. When it comes to, let's just say, impact calculus, which is a great part of your favorite thing to do, which is debate people over stupid things like this, the characters were okay, but they weren't impacted out in a way that you could see what their value actually was. Like, why did they need the money or anything like that? They were just a bunch of greedy assassins, and some were going
Well,
all the way to do it. So I think that they clearly had motivation, so they got some points from me once again in this point because it wasn't like they were motivationless.
but like, I think my question is, why does a character need to have such a deep motivation, especially a side character? Like, their whole point is to add to the story and the development of the main character or the main characters. And so, like, you give them enough of a background, but you don't need to have a ton of motivation. Plus, these guys are all criminals, and you're not giving their whole backstory. They're literally just there for the one movie, like most all of them.
Right. So for example, let's contrast in this movie the character of Marcus versus the other Continental characters, right? Clearly, he has a history with John Wick. Clearly, he really was good friends with John Wick, especially because he came to the funeral and was helping him to grieve over the loss of his wife, right? That's a character that I would say is much more developed as a side character compared to other characters in the movie. Now,
Yeah.
you didn't have a lot of scenes with Marcus. He doesn't have to show up a lot to show that there is a depth to his character, that he's more nuanced than just I'm here for money. Clearly, there's a
Mhm.
friendship there, and that friendship has a span of time that goes into it. And that
Mhm.
makes him a more compelling character as a side character compared to, let's just say, the assassin girl that tries to kill him, who's mediocre, or the bank teller guy, or all those other side characters that were there. The point being is that when you have these backgrounds, it provides nuance and complexity to the side characters. It doesn't take as much time. Now, the importance to that is because when you have these other motivations, it provides opportunity to bleed conflict into the story. So, when you have a character that just decides to go along with what's going on in the story, it doesn't exactly make them a compelling character. Case in point would be characters in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, where you have all of the, let's just say, Jar Jar Binks, who is supposed to be his own character, but honestly, he just goes along with the Jedi because they say, oh, you need to do this, and he's a weak minded man. Now, I'd say he's one of the more compelling characters in Star Wars Episode 1, but even within that, he's not as compelling because he simply aligns himself with the main character's goals rather than having his own nuances and goals for doing things.
I think my question though is, I'm not defending this movie as being a great masterpiece, but
Sure.
I don't think it's a bad movie, so to speak. And so, like, yes, I think great movies have a ton of complexity to them, and
Sure.
there's so many elements in play that are really tied up nicely, and they work really, really well together. And you can tell
Yeah.
there's a lot of thought to it, and it also takes a lot of thought, and like you have to really watch the movie.
Yeah.
Like there's really good movies. Like Star Wars Episode 4 has a really good plot to it. The characters, I think, at least the main characters, are well developed. I don't think I'd look at that movie though and use it as a blueprint for all great movies. I think a lot of the
No.
greatness of it comes from the nostalgia. But the whole point is like you can have a decent or a good movie without having all the complexities of a great movie. And so
No,
like
and I'd agree.
yeah. And
Like,
so with like John Wick side characters, I don't think they're the side characters of a great movie, but I think they're the side characters of a decent movie.
well, yeah, and so, this is another point that I didn't give it the highest marks on, but it still got points for me. Everything
Mm-hmm.
so far in the movie has started off on a decent foot, excuse me.
Yeah.
Like
By the way, I
I
took your little quiz and I got 5.4, not 5.5.
you're
But...
you suck, dude. All right, so
it's okay, bud.
like there's nothing. That's another, like I was saying, the side characters are not remarkable, but they still got some points in that field. The setting I actually thought was very believable. I thought the rules were pretty good. I thought the Continental was actually a really interesting element to the story, and I think it was a great ad. It really drew me in that section in a way that the rest of the movie frankly did not. But
Mm-hmm.
they created a compelling world in that way. So they started off. All this to say is that they started off this movie on the right foot, and I was very happy with it. Hey everyone, quick note. Hope you're all enjoying the podcast. Before we get back to it, would love to get some feedback from you for us. That's right, we're looking for reviews. If you could just give us 5 seconds of your time, hit the little stars in the app that you're listening to it on right now, or give us a thumbs up if you're listening to us on YouTube or one of the other platforms such as that. Anyways, appreciate you guys' time helping us out, helping you guys get more of this great content. Now, back to the show. So, is there a risk to the hero, John Wick, of sacrifice?
I think the risk, and I don't think in terms of like heroes, because that's the thing, is he's not really a hero in the movie.
So, what is he?
An agent of chaos, I would say. Hence the appeal. Can kind of resonate with that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see how that works well with you.
But no, his motivation or the risk he's taking, and it's kind of like it's not really a risk. It's like that you're not getting that back. Is the normalcy of his life, because if he'd left it alone, he would just go back to his life and not get involved. And that's why people kept asking him, "Are you back? Are you back?" It's like if you're back, you don't get to go out again. And they even hint at the fact that like when they talk about the impossible job they gave him in order to get out of this life, and how that was the price he had to pay. But by coming back and involving himself, he loses that life. He doesn't get that anymore. And so it's like, that's it. His life is gone. He doesn't get any normal life anymore. And while, sure, it's not like, oh, if you lose, your entire city is going to die, or if you lose, your family is going to die. I think it's a different type of risk that he's taking. And I don't know. I was looking at the question in your quiz asking about like what risk is he taking, and I'm thinking, and I'm like, does a good story have to have like this ominous risk that like you could lose this if you do this? And I think to some extent, sure, there has to be some semblance of risk involved. But like think about it. He could die. Okay. To him though, it's not a risk. But like that's still a risk that is being taken.
Right. So here's the thing, right? When when we're looking at risk, and this kind of goes along with this goes a little bit along with his goals, right? But there is a balance that is trying to be made in any story, right? About what is at risk here and what is the goal. So there is a weight of a scale of this is what I'm trying to achieve. This is what may or may not happen because I do or do not achieve that goal, right?
Mhm.
And so when you weigh these things on a scale, it puts tension into the plot so that they say, okay, I really, really need this. And the more they really, really need this goal, the higher you bring the tension. On the same time, you have this other thing where it's like, this is at risk. And the higher the stakes of something being at risk here, the higher the tension in that way, too. So you draw these two things apart, and the higher up they go, the more of the risk there is. And so that's what you're looking for when I say, is there a risk of sacrifice? Because you can say, sure, if he has a very compelling goal, something that he has to achieve, right? That's important for his life no matter what, then that can still bring tension into the story. But it's not going to bring as much tension and make the story as compelling as if they have something on the line if they don't achieve that goal. So that's what this question is all about. The and to compare those two things, frankly, like I do think his goal, as much as I think his goal is stupid, he firmly believes that he must kill his enemies. John Wick must destroy the Russian mob for all that they've done. And that is so important to him that he will do whatever it takes to kill them, right?
Mhm.
But the risk of sacrifice, he has nothing that he's at risk because he doesn't care about anything. So his life, like you said, he doesn't care about. His old life is done, so it's not like it's at risk anymore because he's already paid the price. So there's nothing that's holding him back or on the line whether he does this or not. So I think that's one thing where I say that the tension wasn't as high as it could be in this movie because there wasn't a risk of sacrifice.
I mean, I think there's still a risk of sacrifice to him because we're thinking in terms of John Wick's character. What does he see as a risk?
Of course,
To
right?
him, his life is not the thing he sees at risk here. But if you
No,
also think about John Wick and his character, again, his life is surrounded by death. Death is
mm,
the ultimate like price. And so when those guys came and killed him, the risk is the risk of whether or not he takes revenge for his wife's death. And so if he fails, to him, the people who killed his wife will never be brought to justice. Justice will not be served. Because in his world, that's what justice is him
right.
doing that. And so the risk to him is whether or not his wife, this person he spent 5 years of his life with, the only person who has seen what he has interacted with as a normal human being, is going to get justice for the people that killed her. And so I think that's the risk for him, is whether or not that happens. And that's why he's so driven for that, so much so that he's willing to give up any semblance of a normal life after this.
Yeah, so that is part of what I would say is the goal of the movie. So let me compare this to like you brought up earlier, Star Wars Episode 4, right? At the very beginning of the movie, there is the situation where old Ben goes to Luke Skywalker and says, "You should become a Jedi like your father." And Luke says, "No, I'm not going to do that." And they say, "Why?" Well, the reason is because there was a risk of sacrificing his family, Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, if he made himself a high profile character in opposition to the Empire. Now, little did he know at that time that his uncle and aunt were already dead, but he was considering the risk of sacrificing that, and he rejected the call to become a Jedi because of that risk. And so that's something that's a potential that could occur, not necessarily a goal he's trying to achieve. And once that was taken away from him, once that sacrifice was already made, there was nothing holding him back from becoming a Jedi. And so that's when he responds to the call. So the risk of sacrifice is a negative thing that's going to happen in the midst of the story, not the uh, opposite of the goal.
Okay.
So you're
I
saying
guess I guess
basically
I,
his goal is to exact revenge. To say that
mhm.
the risk of sacrifice is not exacting revenge is basically just saying the goal in a different way. And what I'm saying is a risk of sacrifice is something outside of the goal that's at risk, that's going to happen if he does not achieve it, right? If you don't stop the bad guy, then your family dies, right? Or you lose your family's wealth, or you lose, whatever number of things that could occur outside of, oh, let's just say I want to become emperor, or something like that, as in the story of Dune, if you're at all familiar with that.
Okay, but like, why does it have to be separate?
Because frankly, they're different things, and that's the whole point. Is you're trying to make that differentiation.
Okay, but like, if his wife was still alive and the goal was to kill these people so she didn't die, like, I don't know. I
Well,
see
so
what you're
so
saying, but I think that no matter what, the way you put it, the goal and the risks are still, they have to be intertwined. With John Wick, they're just more closely intertwined than most movies.
they have to be connected in some way, sure, and that's what the whole point of the story is. Everything's related to this main character, right? Let's just say in the story that the example was the dog, and the dog dies, and he had a huge connection to the dog, and the wife was still alive. If the goal is the same, to achieve revenge on the Vigo and his gang of thugs, that would be still the goal, was to exact revenge. But then you have a completely outside compelling thing of, oh well, if I don't successfully kill the thugs and enact my revenge, my wife's life is now going to be at stake.
Okay, but at the same time, why do you need that?
So what I'm saying is that when you have these other points, they can add to the tension. Obviously they didn't do that in here, so that is why they didn't give this is why I didn't give them points on here, because there's a risk of sacrificing everything valuable. There is nothing valuable in his life that he cares about that's at risk here.
Yeah, it's just a
And
movie about a man who has nothing to lose.
exactly.
Yeah, it's a different kind of movie.
It is a different kind of movie, but I would say that makes it less compelling in regards to the plot line itself, to have nothing at risk.
I mean, I'm just thinking of like Infinity War. The goal is to stop Thanos. The risk
Mhm.
is Thanos kills half the universe. But like, it's still kind of like the goal is to prevent Thanos from killing half the universe. The risk is if they lose, Thanos does kill half the universe. It's like the same thing.
Well, so here's there's different conflicts in that, right? So, and you can try to boil it down to that basic point, but at the end of the day,
Mhm.
you have very real sacrifices in that story in a different situation. So, for example, Gamora actually dies in that, and part of the
Mhm.
risk of sacrifice is that she sacrifices her life so everyone else can live, right? That's a very real sacrifice, and that's not tied to necessarily, oh, she dies or she doesn't die based off of Thanos. It's a different risk of sacrificing her life versus the goal of trying to stop Thanos. The point is, like the more that you have these other things at risk, the more that there's tension put into the story by having things at stake, the higher the tension will be. And there
Sure.
was nothing at stake for John Wick. That's
Well,
frankly, there isn't.
I think there's definitely stuff at stake for him, but
I mean, his car, sure.
I mean, we're gonna go round and round in circles here. I said it's not a great movie, but I don't think it's a bad movie.
If you were to look at sacrificing everything valuable on a 5 point scale, how much would you give him for this?
On a 5 point scale,
Yes.
I don't know, maybe a one or a two.
Okay, there. So it's like you're not actually that far off from me on that point. I
I
gave
think
it
the thing that's
nothing. You
interesting
gave it
though is
one.
because he sacrificed everything beforehand.
Right. That was the cost initializing into the conflict, right? This is how he
Yeah.
enters the scene. But it isn't what continues to bring tension throughout the movie, right?
Hmm.
It is
Yeah.
something that initiated the conflict.
It's
And
a,
those are
yeah.
different sections.
Yeah. It's just a different kind of movie.
Oh my gosh, dude. Okay, is the villain did you think the villain was compelling?
Who's the villain?
That's a good question. What do you think the villain is?
I think it's the dad. I forget his name.
Vigo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, His son is kind of just the catalyst. Theon Greyjoy would be like, man, man's starting wars left and right. Okay, did it in Game of Thrones, did it in John Wick.
Hmm.
He's basically just a rat. Okay,
Yeah,
he's
of
a
course, of
spoiled little
course.
rat. He's not a
Yeah,
compelling villain at all. Um, the father is a much more interesting villain
I'd
because he
agree.
has history with John. And even though he sees his son and he's like, "You are such a disappointment, you piece of crap,"
Right.
he's still like, "Oh, John killed my son." And there's like that scene where he's sitting there afterwards because he took off the contract. He basically told John where his son was to kill him. And he's like, "Crap. I can't believe I did
Right.
that." Okay,
Right.
we're going to go kill John now. And then he tortures his friend, kills his friend, and then calls John. He's like, "Yeah, I did that. You're welcome."
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because, and you can correct me on this, because like the second half of the movie, it's more like the driving force is no longer the dog, because John got revenge for that. Now he's getting revenge for his friend. Because you think about it, he was done. He wasn't going to kill the dad. He just wanted to kill the son.
Hmm.
And so now he's like, hold on. You killed like my only friend in the world. And like, and I think in a sense, even though John Wick wasn't thinking about the risk involved with that, that was still a risk, so to speak. At least his friend was taking that risk by helping him when
Yeah, but his friend also
Vigo had
almost
it.
shoots him. So it's not like they're quite on the same page on everything. But yeah, it
Yeah,
is true that he's at least appears to profess some sort of love for Marcus when he sees that he's dead. And that
yeah.
seems to
And
be some
so,
sort of at least additional emotional strain to him
yeah,
in the movie.
I think as far as villains go, he was decent.
Yeah, I mean, I gave it pretty strong points. I did think that Vigo actually is a pretty compelling villain up until the end,
I mean,
and
the
I
thing
thought
is
that
like he's not. Oh, good.
no, I mean, I he obviously had nuance to how he did things. He wasn't just trying to kill John Wick. He was trying to save his son at first, and then he almost gets to the same point that John Wick is at, where he's like, "All right, let's just full blown revenge versus revenge. Let's duke it out," kind of situation. So
Yeah,
he's not just the classic, "Aha, I'm an evil man who wants to do evil things because I am evil." He was not like that at all. So I thought that he had a lot
maybe you've been
going for him.
looking at this all wrong, Maverick. Maybe John Wick is the villain in this movie. Vigo is the good
He's the
guy
hero.
because he has a lot to risk. He has this whole industry at risk if he puts a like that the contract on John, and he loses all of it. Ooh, Maverick's thinking. Ooh, he's thinking about it. Oh no, what happened?
No, he's not.
But
Honestly,
he,
I mean, I think you can make the argument that this is a maybe you can make the argument this is an anti-hero versus a villain. More likely it's a villain versus a villain, to be honest.
yeah,
That's just what we're dealing with, which is part of the reason why I do not like this movie. Um, is does the movie consistently put the hero in a worse situation as the story progresses?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, there's a point where, like I said, like he gets resolution, he kills the son, and then it gets worse because now his friend's dead.
Right. So I gave it 1 out of the 5 points of scale that I could on this point because of that one example you just gave. But the rest of the movie, he's always winning. Like, he's always getting what he wants. He's always killing the people, and his life, even though there's bullets flying, excuse me, he is the boogeyman. Well, he is the killer of the boogeyman. Like, he is everyone's worst nightmare. And so, him walking around town murdering people, he is the one that strikes fear into everyone else's eyes, not vice versa.
I
Right?
think you're
And
missing a key component here, though, Maverick.
okay, go ahead.
Rome. Okay, Rome. Why do people love the Coliseum
Oh,
for the
this is
revenge?
exactly why. This is
And
exactly why this movie sells. Go
this
ahead,
is
you tease.
this is literally it's Rome, but it's John Wick. He's got long hair, a dark suit, and an infinite amount of ammunition. Okay, this
Mm-hmm.
man. is the ultimate gladiator, and the Coliseum is whatever city he lives in. All those other people,
actually, go ahead.
all those other people, they're just expendable slaves. Okay, that's all it is.
I mean, I think it would be interesting, especially to review Gladiator and then compare that to this movie and see
I
where.
was just about to say that.
Honestly, I do want to do a deep dive into that movie at some point. But that we'll have to save for another day.
I have a question though for you,
Sure.
because you're saying if because John Wick has nothing left to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Maximus in Gladiator gets to the same point where he has nothing left to lose.
By the end of the movie, yes. I think that he has a lot more nuance to him as a character for what he's trying to achieve, and you see that by how he rebels against Rome versus what you're seeing with John Wick. Now, before we move on too much, because I wanted to get back to what you were saying about Rome, which is that this is the reincarnation of Rome, right? This is the Coliseum reenacted on the big screen for everyone to enjoy.
So
and
good.
Frankly, that's why I think that this movie is as popular as it is. Not because it legitimately has a good plot line, which is what this podcast is all about, Andrew, but because John Wick fulfills a more basic carnal desire in mankind to see almost like a bloodlust. Okay. So
it's basically just murder porn.
It is. It literally is. And so that's why people like it. Is that it fulfills this base instinct that people want to see. And I think that there's a way to show murder on the screen tastefully and meaningfully so that it's not just a carnal base instinct being driven out on the big screen.
But you see, here's the thing. You got to ask yourself, and you can screen this out if I get too graphic here.
Sure. Oh, no.
People don't watch movies for the sex scenes, and if they do, they're dumb because you can just watch porn. So John Wick is just all the good parts about blood and gore with none of the boring stuff like dialogue and character development and any of that. It's just blood and gore, and porn is just all forms of sex. So you don't have to watch all 3 hours of Oppenheimer just to see the 5 minutes with whoever her name is. Hence the appeal. And there's 4 of them, possibly a 5th.
So basically you're saying this is the violent equivalent of pornography.
Yeah, it's just BDSM without the sex.
Oh my gosh, dude. Well, that's exact. I feel like that makes my point more than anything. Yeah.
I'm only going to be contrarian for this episode because I just want to see you get pissed off, and I think it's funny.
I know. I see that. You had that look in your eyes this entire time, dude. Somebody woke up on the wrong side of the bed today and chose violence. Usually that's me.
No. I woke up on the right side of the bed, and and that was violence, okay? Also, violence isn't the answer. It's the question, and the answer is yes.
Okay. Well, as you can see, he's providing all the value.
I'm basically just here to provide any opinion contrary to Maverick, so somebody's bound to agree with me, and because I'm defending so many different viewpoints, more people will like me than you, Maverick.
Anyways, revelation. Is there any big revelations in this movie, or does it have a surprise ending?
No.
I agree. There is no...
I'm going to be honest. I was thinking about this too, and I think it could have been interesting if you found out that somehow one of those crime bosses was involved in faking his wife's death or killing his wife just to get him back into the game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that would have been interesting.
And then at that point, it's like, oh, hold on. Or even if she wasn't even dead yet, they just were holding her prisoner or something as leverage in case they needed it at some point.
Yeah, almost like a Taken type of situation.
Yeah.
I think that would have been a lot more interesting. But it's just like this is, as we said before, such a carnal movie that the revenge aspect might not have been as strong if it wasn't just a pure hatred that was spewing from Keanu Reeves. But yeah, the revelation that could have been an interesting revelation. And if I understand correctly, later movies in this series do try to have these quote unquote epic revelations. They just may not be effective. Transformation. Does the character grow as a person? And does the movie have a theme?
Absolutely.
How does
Absolutely.
like what his blood
He has
donations?
more. He has more and more bloodlust as the movie goes on, so he grows in some ways.
He just leveled
Um,
up because of his blood skill.
I think it's interesting because I think there's an element where you get the semblance that he didn't want to just kill indiscriminately. He had, I think, within the movie, not necessarily, but I think you can tell that as a person, he has grown into that he is satisfied. And you can see that in that he just wanted to kill the son. Now, do I think that's like great character growth? No. Um, I think the themes of the movie. I think there's not justice, revenge, and honor are the two themes of the movie.
Honor, interesting. That's where do you get that?
It's like the idea of honor among thieves, and that's you get that from the
Oh,
Continental.
from the Continental.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like there's a code of ethics that even we as criminals follow.
Hmm.
If you really do break those rules and you pass that line, then yeah, you're a bad boy.
I would say in regards to themes, revenge was the one I saw. I think honor is interesting. Revenge was a pretty generic one though, so it got some points here for me, not a lot. Um, he doesn't really grow as a person in my mind. He goes back to his life, but with a new dog, like literally ending the movie how he started. And that's where I think the dog's value actually is cheapened in this story
Yeah,
because he just took a random dog out of the pound and said it could replace this gift from his wife. So it then begs the question, like, did the dog actually have meaning or not? And to just choose a random dog indicates, if anything, that it didn't have meaning, and you were just setting it up to say, oh, let's get ready for round two, which most certainly is coming in a year or
yeah.
two. So I don't think you see the same vengeful person at the beginning and at the end. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's not great in regards to making an interesting, compelling character. Did this movie leave you satisfied?
Yeah,
Of course, everyone else is satisfied but me from this movie.
you have to ask yourself, Maverick, why did I watch the movie in the first place?
To piss me
I
off,
want
that's
to
why.
no, I wanted mind numbing entertainment. That's why I watched it.
Going back to what this really is about, as you said earlier.
It's just murder porn, okay? That's all it is.
It literally is. It literally
Yeah.
is. That's
It's Rome at the height of its glory. And they say men think about Rome once a day. And so if you like thinking about Rome and the Coliseum was like the epitome of Rome, then of
right.
course John Wick's appealing. It's just modern day Rome. And the Coliseum doesn't have like walls. It's just the entire freaking planet.
Right, where your bloodlust fantasies can roam wild on the big screen. Yeah.
Yeah. It's every degenerate man's dream. Although I will say, John Wick, despite all his flaws, is not like a sexual degenerate. So
No,
he's got that going for him. Because most
which is
guys are
nice.
probably thinking of like sex and killing. But they took the sex out, which I appreciate. Because if they put a sex scene in there, I would have been like, okay, brother, you are dumb as words I can't say.
Yeah.
That would also have completely cheapened his wife's death. It would have been like, brother.
I was less than satisfied. Uh I personally hated this movie. I think the ending really did me in, especially because his whole goal was to viciously murder his enemies, and then in that very
Mm-hmm.
last scene, both with the dog and then with looking at the mob boss Vigo in the eyes, instead of slashing his head off or any other vicious final act of revenge. He just says, "Oh, okay, bye," and the bad guy says, "Be seeing you, John."
Hey, he grew as a
That
person. He doesn't
Yeah,
have to kill him
okay,
anymore.
you're so okay. That was his goal. His whole goal was to kill these people, and then at the end he goes, "Oh, I'm not gonna kill him." No reason why.
If you watch Thor: Love and Thunder, you can see the same thing with Gore the God Butcher. He realizes he doesn't have to kill all the gods because it's not what his daughter would have wanted. And maybe that's what John thought in those last moments. It's not what my wife would want right now. And so I shouldn't do it. Or maybe he thought this isn't what, actually, no, his other friend probably would have wanted it. Yeah, he grew as a person. Okay.
Okay,
He has grown. He has matured. He's a better man.
okay. This is there are how I feel about this. These are the notes I left, Andrew, but I'm not going to say them on the pod. But that is legitimately how I feel. Is that this is the stupidest. The "be seeing you, John" line is the stupidest line I have ever seen in a movie.
I could die. I have some serious problems with that, but okay.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. That's
I don't think it's a great line. I don't think it's the dumbest line you have ever seen.
Considering that his whole goal was this is a revenge story and it's about killing people, and at the end he doesn't kill the man, is stupid. Be
He grew
seeing
as a
you, John.
person. You were complaining about character growth. He grew.
This is that's not in this case because it was his goal. It's not even character growth. It's just
sometimes our goals are the problems. That's the character flaw.
If this was about character growth, if there was anything else that signified character growth other than that one line where he walks away, I might be willing to go down this path and consider it with you. But there is nothing else in the story afterwards or before that indicates this.
Like Wanda in WandaVision, her goal is to have her family, but at the end she decides, no, I shouldn't do that because it's the wrong thing to do. She grew. Loki, he wants to be with his friends.
Doesn't she become a bad guy right after that, though?
Yeah, well, that was dumb. Anyways, and Loki, and Loki, his goal is to have all his friends, but he decides to sacrifice himself for the greater good of the universe because it's the right thing to do. Growth, okay? Just because you don't do the thing you're supposed to doesn't mean it's a bad movie. Like Gore the God Butcher and Thor: Love and Thunder. Now, I will not give my opinion on this movie because I would probably
You already
say
did.
several words, but we're going to move on.
The very fact that there's 3 more John Wick movies indicates, if anything, that this idea of not enacting revenge does not stick with John Wick very long.
Oh, but you don't understand. He's not just doing it for revenge. He has a higher calling to bring pleasure to the viewers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Okay, that's all I have to say left on this pod. That's it. We hope everyone enjoyed. I will be back next time. We'll see if I bring Andrew back.
The most reasonable of all of his co-hosts, obviously.
Yeah, I'm sure Andrew will be back.
Haven't used IMDb once.
That's as your summary. That's hilarious. At Avalon.
100%
all right.
just up here.
We will see everyone back here next week.